Hello. Hi everyone. Welcome to Guiding Voice podcast series, The Guiding Voice for a Better Future. This podcast is to help students and young professionals to shape their careers. Thank you for tuning in. This is Naveen and I'm with my co-host Sudhakar. Dear listeners, in this episode, we want to cover about how new technologies like AI, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and IoT, Internet of Things, are helping companies to reinvent themselves in the digital world. And we are pleased to have Madhav as our guest today.
Madhava Venkatesh is the co-founder and the chief technology officer of TrustTrace. That's a deep technology company based on artificial intelligence, blockchain, and Internet of Things, that is IoT. TrustTrace is a product traceability and transparency solution for fashion, food, and pharma industry, and this is headquartered in Stockholm, Sweden. Madhav has more than 20 years of experience in building large-scale digital solutions for online, retail, manufacturing, and pharma industries. In addition, Madhav has 4 patents in the area of multi-tenancy and cloud. At TrustTrace, he is responsible for the technology and engineering that is currently being used by more than 32 brands and 4,000 plus suppliers across more than 20 countries. Madhav, welcome to our show. It's indeed fantastic to host you today on our podcast.
Hey, thank you, Naveen and Sudhakar. It's great to be a part of the Guiding Voice platform. Looking forward for an engaging conversation.
Absolutely. Madhav, you have been in the industry for over 2 decades and have seen various technologies. From your viewpoint, can you explain on how the technologies evolved?
It's an interesting question because last 2 decades there has been a lot of disruptive technologies that has been launched and scaled up. For example, if you take an autonomous car, which is an upcoming application of multiple technologies today, it combines technology disruptions that happen in the area of cloud, big data, sensors, video, mobile internet, and artificial intelligence. So all these technologies have come together to create new applications that were not possible about 20 years back, which is 2 decades back. And all this didn't happen suddenly. It has been a continuous journey of multidisciplinary technology innovations. If you take, for example, in 2000, it started with a revolution in smart personal devices. I don't know how many of you would have heard about personal PDAs. So there were palm tops, which was primarily helping people to look at their emails when they were on the move. And then, for example, if I just look back at how connected cars were at the time, cars were still having some connectivity, primarily for emergency response and anti-theft type of solution. From internet, it was primarily a 2G connectivity that was available across the globe. So all the applications have to leverage this connectivity. And most importantly, I think 2000 we were in middle of dot-com bubble, right? So we were having a lot of companies like Amazon, eBay, PayPal, which were disrupting the industry through internet-based commerce solutions. And maybe that's how I see in early 2000. And then as we moved forward in the decade, Apple launched iPod, which was a connected audio streaming service. So they built a complete iTunes store in the middle of around 2005 or 7, sometime around that. That marked a major breakthrough in digital content distribution, how people can consume content from their personal devices, which are distributed through the cloud. And then the cloud computing was getting popular. So Amazon launched AWS. Salesforce.com was becoming a $1 billion company, which was a poster child of what we call a software as a service era. And then the video was becoming more popular, right? I think YouTube was just launched, and the mobile internet bandwidth was able to handle the video. Then Web 2.0, I don't know if anybody would recall that term. Things like social media, blogging platforms, Wikipedias, where the end users could generate content. right, was getting more popular. So till the time e-commerce or websites of different companies, it was primarily created by the enterprises, and the end consumers were only consuming those content. But I think in the middle of 2000, or I mean maybe early 2000, people started contributing back, right? So that was, for example, if you go to Amazon, you have this rating and reviews which help you to decide on your next purchase, etc. All of this revolution started sometime in the first decade of this century. Now if you look at the second decade, some of these innovations became more mainstream, and then there were new disruptions like artificial intelligence, which were getting commoditized. See, I think some of these technologies always existed, but being available at a cost for people to use, and where a normal developer will be able to leverage them, right? The tools required for normal developers to leverage them was made available in the past decade, right? So artificial intelligence, then 3D printing, blockchain, and now quantum computing. So all of these capabilities have now become more commoditized and being available for any developer. It's no longer a research oriented project. For example, if you take blockchain, I mean, from late 90s, people have been talking about blockchain, but Bitcoin showed the world of how a decentralized currency, a digital currency, can be created on the internet, and now that is getting replicated in other areas. The Internet of Things, again, I talked about autonomous cars. It is reshaping the way people interact with machines, and I mean, how today your jobs are getting automated. For example, if you have a personal assistant device like Alexa, you can actually use Alexa to ask for a Ola cab, right? So you can book an Ola cab using your Alexa platform. So it's the devices, intelligent devices are getting integrated into your life today, even without you realizing. So it's no longer just about mobile phones. It's about your lighting becoming smarter, your interactions or business transactions getting done through these assistants, etc. That's how the world has changed. And I'm very excited because now some of the problems that could not be attempted before are now possible to be solved with these technology changes that has happened over 2 decades.
Wow, Madhav, that's an amazing summary of evolution of technology in these 2 decades. In fact, it made me nostalgic too. On the current topic about digital world and the new technologies, Madhav, how do you explain blockchain in simple terms? Also, in the current generation, blockchain is often confused with Bitcoin only, and most of the people in technology also think they both are the same. Can you please share some applications of blockchain other than Bitcoin as well?
Yeah, sure. So if you look at the disruption that is possible with blockchain, see, traditionally, if you take a banking system, it was all driven through centralization and authority. Right. So what I mean by centralization authority is, I mean, if you're, for example, issuing a check to your brother, there is a bank from which the money has to move to another bank where your brother holds your account, right? So the money is moved from your account to your brother's account. So now this entire transaction were managed by 2 different banks, which was regulated by a government organization. Okay, so the bank A, which is your bank, had information about saying you had so much money that can be transferred into your brother's account, and the brother's account bank was able to take this transaction and store information saying, okay, now this amount is credited with say 100 rupees. Okay, so this banking system exists for ages, right? And it is existing because you have a trust in the bank in which you guys perform the transaction, where you hold your money. Now this bank, the trust is coming primarily because of 2-3 reasons, right? One, of course, there is a government and regulation which is giving the trust, and of course the second thing is, I mean, how long the bank has been in existence, who is managing the bank, etc. Right? The transparency levels of the bank, etc. determines your trust on the bank. Now, assuming this trust can be provided instead of people, government, and regulation, if the same trust can be performed or provided using technology and algorithm, that is where blockchain comes into picture, right? So if a technology, I mean, today, for example, when you hit a website, right, and trying to pay, then you have something called verified by interest or whatever, right? So it gives you an assurity that this particular website is not going to do a fraud on your credit card, right? So you are already using some of these trust based systems. Again, in that case, the trust is provided by a specific third party. Okay, so it is still a centralized system. Okay, so if we can create a network where there is no centralized system and the centralized system will be replaced through technology and a set of algorithms, that is where the blockchain is a game changer, right? So a simple example, right? So land records, okay? If you take a land record, the government, you have the registration offices which are run by the state governments. Today they are maintaining your land record and they're saying, okay, this guy is the owner of the land that is available in this space today. And the system of record or the truth is being verified by the buyer with the custodian who is maintaining the land record, right? So in this case, the state registration office, right? Now, there is so much of cost involved because there is a central body. Somebody has to pay the money to the central body to manage this information. There are employees and people who are working there. And no way it is preventing frauds, right? Maybe it is reducing frauds, but it is not preventing frauds. But if we can build a technology-led system that will 100% have truth, or that will always be used to establish the truth of who is owning a specific part of a land based on the GPS coordinate, and if that algorithm that is maintaining the ownership information cannot be breached, that is where the blockchain is coming up. Right, so that is where the blockchain is solving that problem. Okay, so it is creating a trust network which is decentralized, where there is no single owner, so nobody would have any incentive to breach or to alter any information on that. And the algorithm is protecting the data, and it is owned by the people, so that there is no single party who will get benefited if there is any breach that happens in the network. So that is primarily how blockchain is a potential replacement to a lot of use cases that are today managed or today that are handled by centralized body. So a simple other use cases, right? So if I take the supply chain, for example, take a cotton value chain, right? So the raw material is produced in India, it is converted into yarn maybe within India, but it is converted into a fabric, say in Bangladesh, and then it is stitched into the final garment, say in Italy. Okay, the products moves across 4 or 5 different areas or regions, and at every point there is so much of paper based movement that happens in ensuring that the right product is reaching the right hands. Okay, now blockchain provides a new mechanism to replace these paper trails by recording these transactions on the blockchain that can be verified. So the buyer eventually in US, assuming the product gets shipped from Italy to US, the buyer in US can know that it is exactly the cotton, quality of cotton, for example, organic cotton from India that their shirt is made of. Okay, if you can provide that confident information back to the end consumer or to the brand who is paying money for it, I think those are the other use cases of blockchain. So the potential of blockchain, where there is a multi-party commerce or where are multiple parties who are involved, where the trust between the parties is provided by a central body, you can think about, there are so many use cases like that in the world, and all of them can be replaced using blockchain at some point.
Hey, Madhav, I think this is cool. Those were all great examples across domains. And it also reminded me about the tuna fish that is being tracked using blockchain. All these are pretty exciting stuff. I think we can use blockchain across various domains, and it will help in streamlining the transactions, besides enabling authenticity and also serving as a source of legitimacy. So that's all great. So what do you think are the current limitations of this blockchain technology?
Maybe I'll talk about 3 different aspects. One is the limitation of the technology itself. Okay, I think the major challenge that people today are facing is around interoperability. So if there are 2 different networks and if the data has to move from one network to the other, for example, if say all the cocoa producers create their own blockchain network, and then the data has to be integrated into another blockchain network, probably which is running at, say, the European level, right? So assuming in Europe, all the brands have come together and created their own blockchain network, whereas in Africa, there is a different blockchain network that is recording the source and movement of cocoa products, right? How do I integrate these 2 data, and how do we ensure that the integrity of data is not lost when we do this integration? I think there are no clear standards. So we hope at some point it will come. The good thing is, in Bitcoin, there are already exchanges. For example, you can convert your standard currency to Bitcoin currency, etc. So at some point, I'm sure there'll be new token exchanges that will come that will help us to solve this problem. The second major area of limitation is around the incentives to adopt, right? So, I mean, if you take the tuna fish example that we just talked about, it primarily helps people to know where the fish was caught and whether it was caught from a region where the fish is grown naturally or it is grown inside a farm, etc. Right? So those information has to be shared by the supplier or the producer of the fish. And what is their incentive to share this? Okay, one, of course, I mean, it will increase the transparency and it will help the end consumers. But the supply chain is at least 2-3 steps away from the end consumer. Okay, so they don't see a value in supporting end consumers buying decision, and today it is more like a stick approach, right? I mean, saying share me the data because you are legally bound to share me because I want to share that information back to my customer, right? So it's becoming more like a stick approach. I think there has to be some incentive mechanism that should flow through. So if you're a transparent farmer, then you will get these perks, these additional benefits, right? So that has to be defined, and it is going to be a very, very industry specific initiative. The third major area is blockchain is not just an independent technology, right? So for example, Bitcoin, okay, unless more transactions can be done through Bitcoin will never get popular, right? So if I can go and buy on an e-commerce store using Bitcoin, then how will I spend? How will I transact on the Bitcoin, right? So what is more important is those technologies, okay, that are enabling transactions to be written into blockchain, or those applications that can use the information recorded on the blockchain for other downstream value generation, right? So a simple example is if I take IoT, right? So if you take a simple example of a use case around monitoring whether a vaccine is kept under the recommended temperature range, okay, assuming a vaccine requires to be maintained at minus 10 degrees centigrade, okay, during its transit, and you want to prove that using blockchain, okay. So blockchain is just one part of the story, whereas the entire data collection of what temperature the drug is maintained needs an IoT and connectivity solution, right? So the total cost of the project has to include all these three different technologies. And if you put all of these three things together, okay, there is no clear established business case still available for a large number of use cases. Why technologically it is possible, but is there a value? Okay, is there a commercial benefit in doing that? Is not very clear for a lot of use cases. So the adoption of blockchain will be driven by the progress on other industries like or other technologies like IoT, and that's how the adoption of blockchain will increase as we move forward.
Those are great insights on blockchain, Madhav. And you touched upon another important technology that is picking up steam in the last few years, IoT, the Internet of Things. So how do you think IoT can disrupt the industry?
Yeah, I mean, IoT has a significant potential to change our life, right? In the last 5 years, right, if you look at what all you have seen smarter, right? So, for example, I think Onida or somebody launched an air conditioner that can be switched on and off from your mobile phone, right? So maybe those were the beginning of smart devices in your life, right? Today, all of us have Fitbits, okay? Now, what is the advantage of Fitbit? It is a device which is having connectivity, which is sending real-time data about what it is monitoring. It's a device which has some sensors, okay, about your movement, about your heart rate, I mean, your pulse, etc. It has a connectivity which is feeding real-time information about what is getting sensed on your body. Then there are some software applications, maybe that some of them are running in your mobile phone, which shows what is your sleeping pattern, is your heart rate fine, and what has been your trend over a period of time. And then there are additional services that can be delivered on top of this data. For example, if your pulse rate is increasing or if your sleep pattern is disturbed, then somebody can come and offer you a service for sleep apnea, right? So they can now use this information to provide meaningful and real-time services for you, right? So just a Fitbit, it can help you to completely improve your life, your sleeping pattern, your workout patterns, and all your wellness related areas. So the major beneficiary from Internet of Things, according to me, right, will be healthcare. Okay. So just imagine robotics based operations. Okay. Today A lot of hospitals have robotic surgery where the doctor can program, how the entire protocol on the robot and can remotely monitor and do some basic intervention. And if you look at this, what it is enabling is now the doctor need not be physically present in the operation theater, and he can sit probably 100 kilometers in a remote place and then can perform surgery, right? And if you take a country like India, where it is very complex to make healthcare accessible across the region, a remote patient monitoring and remote surgery type of solution will increase the number of people who are covered in the standard healthcare processes. The other major innovation that I can see is, drug adherence, right? So today in India, if you look at it, most of us go to the doctor to get a prescription, buy the drugs most of the time, but we don't follow the prescription properly, right? So a simple example is people who are suffering from asthma, okay, or COPD devices, where you need to take, you have these inhalers. Now these inhalers are becoming smarter, and they know that you are taking the right number of puffs, okay, because you don't want to take more drug or you don't want to take less drug. So somebody should say that, okay, 5 puffs is what is allowed, okay, and you have to take 2 times a day, 5 puffs, right? If a system can track your adherence and also control, okay, so from over usage of drugs, okay, so I know people who say that, okay, if I buy a Benadryl bottle, instead of just taking 5 ml or 10 ml of Benadryl, if I take 15 ml, I'll get good sleep and maybe the cough will go away faster, right? So and it's actually very poisonous if you overconsume a drug. So these are primarily the use cases, right? Of how the drug adherence and drug control can improve the patient's life. The other major vertical is manufacturing, right? Today, with aging labor, may not be so applicable in India, but if you look at, say, advanced or a more industrialized economy like US or Europe, a significant challenge around aging population, and these jobs are not so sexy to do. So a lot of remote monitoring, autonomous manufacturing systems are coming up. I already talked about autonomous cars, and if you just look at what autonomous cars has the potential to do, it can completely transform the way in which people move from point A to point B, and the providers or service providers like Uber, who are working on ride-sharing models, will benefit the most from such solutions, because now most of their costs are coming down and the need for people to own the cars are coming down, and you get the same quality mobility services wherever you go. So I think these are significant game changers for our day-to-day, how it will impact our day-to-day lives.
Madhav, great example, which are very realistic. Let's address the elephant in the room. Do you think these latest technologies like IoT, blockchain, artificial intelligence, machine learning, these are all overhyped?
I don't think so. I think these technologies are must-haves for the challenges that we have today and the challenges of the future. If you take a simple example of the pandemic that all of us are in right now, around COVID, a contact tracing app is such a big boon for us to minimize the pandemic. So now the contact tracing is happening using Bluetooth and mobile phones, etc. This was not the use case for which these devices existed initially, right? So the global problems today, okay, I'll just take a simple example of the automotive industry again, okay? The largest global problem today we all face beyond the pandemic is climate change, right? So the challenge with climate change is, by 2050, if we don't reduce our emissions, we are going to have irreversible changes to the climate, which will impact the future generations on this planet, right? Now, if you look at this problem, while people are looking at reusability of materials, recycling, or reducing, etc. The biggest innovation in automotive sector is what happened with Uber and Ola, right? So they brought a ride-sharing solution which actually leverages all the technologies that we are talking about, right? Mobility, artificial intelligence, IoT, etc. To offer a new service, okay, which was not available about 10 years back. And now what is the advantage of this is the number of cars that people will own will eventually come down, right? Because most of the time, the car is sitting idle. If you're in office, the car is sitting in your office for about 9.5 hours. You just come back home and then the car is sleeping for about 12 to 14 hours at your home, right? Completely underutilized commodity, and the resources that is used to manufacture a car is significantly high, okay? And the problem of overconsumption of resources in the automobile industry is going to come down based on these technology innovations. When they came together, they created a new application space, and that is where I think the most interesting innovations, which are at global scale and which can solve some of the larger problems that we are having. The other area that is coming up, I think 3D printing, maybe I didn't spend a lot of time on this. People are today talking about personalized products. A simple example is if you're buying a Lego toy, you only get Lego toys based on the standard designs that are available. But why not I create my own customized bricks? So these are innovations which are happening, which means that I am now looking at more personalized products that will suit my interest and my usage patterns. And that will come based on these innovations which are driving through. And when the world is becoming hyper connected, right? So for example, when I have to manufacture a single t-shirt that fits the personalized requirement of a consumer, how do I handle the entire complexity of the supply chain in the traditional model, right? So, I mean, because the paper-based model that we already have are fairly complex and cannot support a batch size of one type of use cases. So these technologies are very critical for us to handle some of the significant world problems that we have, and also for better personalized products and the overall lifestyle in which we live. All the healthcare example I said, it's going to improve our lives for better. That is what I see these technologies are going to do in the next decade or so.
I think we have pretty much covered on .com era, Web 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, mobile, cloud, AI, ML, blockchain, so on and so forth. So right now, all we have to do is identify a problem, and there is a technology which can enable us to find solutions. So these last 20 years, technology has made our lives easy, and at the same time, we became lethargic too. So I'm really curious how the future is going to look like. What kind of technologies do we foresee in the next 5 to 10 years? So what are your thoughts on that, Madhav?
I think what is going to be important in the next few years is how ethically we can use these technologies. What are the governance models, that we put in place? For example, autonomous missions which are driven from artificial intelligence. When I say autonomous missions, it talks about a manufacturing plant where all the systems are on its own, where it responds to an order based on the inventory that it has, right? So with very, very limited people. If those missions starts coming in, it's going to have an impact on the overall availability of jobs for people, and how far we want the AI to take over our jobs and take control of our lives, right? So already people are talking about how Facebook is manipulating an election, etc. So there are amazing set of benefits from these technologies. These technologies are today so powerful that we should be extremely careful about how we make progresses in this technology. The second area is data privacy and protection are going to be very critical. So the data is owned by individuals like you and me, which is used by these companies to provide services for us. So how far they can leverage the data about you? Because now, with your mobile phones and smart devices at your home, they will exactly know everything about you as an individual. So we still don't have a clarity on how much control as a user we want to give to these intelligent systems. And that's going to be a major point of debate, and a lot of systems I feel will come. Quantum computing is a very, very new emerging area. The good thing is, already Google, Amazon, they're all offering quantum computing as service. So even a normal developer sitting in a remote village now can leverage the power of quantum computing. And that's going to give us a lot of solutions. For example, climate modeling or the next cancer drug discovery, all of them are going to be made much faster in the next 4-5 years because of quantum computing. Electric and autonomous cars are going to become mainstream especially in developed countries. So Uber is investing. We already know Tesla has made some significant advancement in their autonomous algorithm. So it's going to be a part of the traffic. I think we'll have maybe specially designed roads to accommodate these autonomous and electric, especially the autonomous vehicles, and it will give more space for people to move in cities. So, of course, irrespective of whatever happens with technology, I think all we want to do is go back to offices, go back to schools and meet people and hope that these technologies will help us to be safe. Irrespective of any new pandemic coming in, I hope that before the next pandemic hits, we will have sufficient technology that will keep us safe, irrespective of what we do in our lives.
That will be a boon for sure.
Absolutely. Madhav, let's shift some gears and get into little personal space. With your products penetrating into major markets and being used across 20 plus countries in different time zones and all, how does a typical work day in your life look like? Meaning being the CTO.
Yeah, I think what's interesting being a CTO is the ability to stay in touch with some of these upcoming new technologies and seeing how those technologies can be leveraged in solving the domain or the area in which we are operating. Okay, so about 30% of my time goes in tracking these technologies and looking at how it can apply to our industry. 30% of my time goes in listening to the customers, because they provide a lot of insights about how they are getting value from the product. Because when we build a product, we perceive some value. Of course, even though we have done a lot of user interviews and user studies, etc. But as the product hits the road and people starts consuming the product, they see additional values than what we originally intended. So we have to constantly look for those feedback from the customers and try to look at improving the product. Then combining these two information, the technology and the customer feedback, how do we build the product in the right way, right? So working with my engineering team, participating in their Scrum ceremonies, understanding how the product is being built, how to make the engineering team's life happier in the work that we do. That's another 30% of the time. About 10% of my time goes into just a thinking break, right? So you just need to look for inspirations in other areas. For example, in the healthcare space, might be interesting for someone who is in banking and finance. Because both are having the same set of customers, right? So in fact, very interestingly, when Uber was originally launched, the industry it impacted was the insurance industry, because the insurance industries had a lot of agents who are doing this job of selling the insurance products. They all moved to Uber because it was giving them a much more predicted salary. So you never know, right? So which industry will impact what and where you can take your inspirations from. So that's how the remaining time goes in, right? Looking at other industries, taking some inspirations. Yeah.
Excellent. It was an amazing, intriguing discussion with you, Madhav. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and having this great conversation with us on various aspects of latest technologies, including blockchain, IoT. This is amazing. We really wish you all the very best in your endeavor as well. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great to be on this platform. Looking forward.
Thank you, Madhav.
Dear listeners, to know more about our speaker and the content, visit or follow us on social media, or feel free to email us, and we will be happy to share further details with you.
All right. So it brings us to the trivia segment of today's episode. And today's trivia is about little old technology, alarm clocks. And by the way, I'm not going to talk about the most loved snooze feature at all, but its history. The first alarm clock could only ring at one time. Yes, you heard it right. Literally one time. The first mechanical alarm clock was invented by Levi Hutchins in 1787, and it could only ring at 4 a.m. Very difficult to imagine how people managed to use it. And only it was until 1876 that a wind-up alarm clock was made that could be set for any time. Anyways, I'm glad that our alarms are very, very flexible compared to those 1700 days. Alright, interesting, isn't it? Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Be safe.